Medicine
Medicine
Path.
Path. And tonight we have a real special guest. Her name is Courtni StarHeart Hale, and she's with the Church of the Natural Law.
And she's become a good friend of ours, and she's a wealth of knowledge
Yes, she
on
is.
what is safe and sacred in ceremony.
And
really
that's what we're
grateful
going to be
to have
discussing tonight. We're going to be discussing safe and sacred ceremonies and a few other things. So why don't we go ahead and introduce Courtni?
Hey, Courtni.
Hi, greetings. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much. We're excited to have you too.
Yes, we
Hey,
are.
why don't you start out by just telling us, give us your backgrounds, give us what you got.
A little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a traditionally trained medicine person from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Before that, I studied at American University. I was a Spanish interpreter for the public defenders. So I've always been interested in culture, and I've always been interested in Latin American studies and Native American culture. Half of my family is Native American, so I grew up going to powwows and within Native American culture, displaced from the tribal setting. So it was very interesting to go back to the tribal homelands and learn more about what had kind of been lost.
Right. So let me ask you, in your ceremonies, what do you practice? What is safe and sacred to you in your ceremonies?
That is an amazing question, and it's deep and it's wide. In our ceremonies, the first thing is that we give people an opportunity to get to know us and for us to get to know them before they even come. So it's not just a given that someone can pay a certain amount of money and show up at ceremony. We like to give people a chance to get educated, to train themselves, and get comfortable with us and see if they feel like it's a good fit, as well as for us. So that's thing number one.
Okay.
Now, what do you do about pre-integration? And are you big on the pre-integration aspect?
Oh, absolutely. Over the years, we've developed a fairly extensive packet. Um, it's called Four Steps into the Vortex. And so it deals with the medicine wheel, our different aspects of consciousness and symbolic language. Most plant medicine doesn't speak English or Spanish or Chinese. Plant medicine speaks in symbolic language. So we like to educate people about that and to educate them about how there's two aspects to our being, that we're both physical and spiritual. And that's not something that's just kind of a given.
Right.
Some people aren't even sure if they believe that they have a spirit. They're a little bit disconnected from their spiritual nature in modern culture. So that's one of the first things we do. We have integration calls afterwards, and we have Zoom calls before, where we actually give people a chance to talk with us and talk to each other and get to know more about the ceremony and all of that. It's a lot. Some people say that our training packet is almost too much, but people can read as much as they feel comfortable reading. There are videos online. There's a lot of resources that people can dive into. But I think it's better to have more than not enough, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And let me ask you, when people are first approaching this medicine with you, because I know you deal with a lot of these medicines. So,
and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Right. How do you go about recommending which medicine people are going to experience? Some people might want to come in with ayahuasca and they've never done ayahuasca before. So how do you go about approaching that with people?
It seems to me that when someone is called to ayahuasca, they kind of know it. Some people will have dreams. Some people will have synchronicities and intuitions. It's almost like, how does a salmon know when to swim upriver to get home?
Makes sense,
and I think a lot of people are kind of trying to swim upriver to get back to consciousness and spirit and unity. And they feel that calling. And for the most part, we do work with ayahuasca.
And when she calls, you know it, right? I mean, there's no mistaking that call.
Yeah. What was that like for you guys when you got the call? How did it work for you?
You want to go?
No, you go ahead first.
That was about 3 years ago, ayahuasca called me. But I think I've been on this journey now all my life. I don't think I've always doubted everything. So, I truly believe I've been here before. And I guess my calling was I was just empty, and all the medicines and the talk therapies, nothing ever really worked. And, I just kept researching online if there was anything else because, I didn't find anything else that was helpful. Ayahuasca kept popping up. And, I was thinking about going to Peru. Make a long story short, I didn't. I went to a place up in Orlando, and it was a beautiful experience. My first one, I'll tell you, was really rough, but that medicine opened my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just did something to me that, it just was amazing.
Those things
And
that
I've done
nothing
many
else can
others.
do, right?
I
I
think
know,
for
I get teared up too.
I think
Yeah.
for that part, I think for the ayahuasca more so, my first journey was really just terrifying. And, something called me back again because I was just, and I'm the type of person, I've done 23 sittings with ayahuasca. I just like to get beat up. And, I think the last lesson that I learned was, why do I have to keep making everything so tough? So, it's just a heart opening medicine. And I think experiencing that medicine really helped me experience the others in such a deeper way. So I guess you can go, Michelle.
That's a tough to follow.
It is. It is. I had witnessed the father of my children. He had gone and done ayahuasca, also down in Orlando. And when he came back from that experience, what I saw in him was so changed. The way that he loved his children, the way that he showed them love. I'll probably tear up too.
Yeah.
The way he showed himself love. We'd known each other all our adult lives, and it was profoundly different. And I thought, I got to see what that's about. I got to see what that's about because I thought that I had sort of figured things out. I had joined a 12-step program looking for a different way of life, and I found it in there. I found spirituality. I started down that road, but I still felt stuck. And when I saw him and I saw this change about him, I had to go figure it out for myself. I had to go see what it was about. And so I did. And it's been about 3 years, and it's just been this incredible journey. So, it's important to us to talk to you and people like you and figure out what is
Right.
safe and sacred in ceremony, because
Right.
that's how life-changing it is.
Right. Because I think a lot of people for me, integration was the biggest part of this because
Still is.
it still is. It's an everyday work in progress. This is life changing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just is.
Mm-hmm. It is. And I feel that's, your connection to this goes into your ancestry, right? You are really connected to this in a very, in the spirit world. And I would like to hear more about that.
Right.
That really interests me. And it's such an important aspect of this. You were in the, with the spirit molecule. I don't want to say his name wrong, so maybe you could say it, but I would just like to hear a little bit about this.
Okay. Wow. I was about to tell a story, kind of a funny story, about just what you're talking about, how you're never the same. But that kind of segues into Patricio. My teacher was probably one of the last traditional medicine men. I'm not sure because I don't know everything, but a lot of our culture, Native American culture, was interrupted more so in North America than in South America. So it's really uncommon and precious to have had a beautiful teacher. So he was from the Mesilla Valley. He's from the Piramanso-Tiwa tribe, and he was initiated when he was just 5 years old, and then they moved off the reservation to Albuquerque, and he was called back later on. After that, he became part of an experiment. Rick Strassman did a series of experiments that became a book called The Spirit Molecule, DMT. And that's one of the components of ayahuasca, of course. It's kind of like the governor that gives us the illusion of being separate from the spirit world. And so in those experiments, they were shot up intravenously with DMT. And, most people have seen the movie. If you haven't seen it, I don't want to ruin it for you. The outtakes, I think, are some of the best part because Patricio did a lot of outtakes. And he's very charismatic. And he was a great teacher. Very, very traditional, Paleolithic, almost Castaneda-like shaman. More than once, if not a dozen times, I've actually seen him make rain, make thunder, make lightning. The relationship with the elements, the relationship with the spirit world is just breathtaking.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so learning from him was an intense but really amazing experience. Um, a little bit like MMA training, I think, but
yeah,
for shamanism. Because if you're not strong enough to take on your own inner world and understand your inner self, how are you going to help other people? And I mean,
right.
of course, most healers are wounded deeply, are people who've really suffered a lot, and then they're
Mhm.
called to this healing practice. And if they can figure it out for themselves, the first thing they want to do is share it with other people. Um,
Right.
so, nobody who's a healer is perfect or is ever even trying to be. Um, but fascinating, powerful, intense, all of that. Yeah. Um, so yeah, the first thing we started with was my carrying bags, which was humbling. I had been a, a fairly affluent business owner
Hmm.
and a National Merit Scholar and had been in a PhD program. I was your average white person for all intents and purposes, or to say mainstream, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
it really doesn't matter what color your skin.
Absolutely.
So many people who are Native American actually are mainstream now, and
Right.
we've lost our culture. So it's not about race; it's about culture. Anyway, it was kind of shocking for me and humbling to be made to carry bags and scoop dog poop and chop wood and pull weeds and just sit down and be quiet and learn, right? So there
Right.
was a good 5 years of that before I was even allowed to start keeping fire to
Hmm.
pour sweat lodge. At the same time, I had already studied for, oh gosh, like 15, 20 years yoga, martial arts, herbalism, homeopathy, every different spiritual practice I could get my hands on. So I was pretty well educated when I got to him. I had been a Reiki master for years. Um,
Plus, you have
but
several bachelor's degrees, right?
huh?
Plus, you have several bachelor degrees.
Yeah, I have a dual bachelor's from American University's School of International Service, where I was actually looking for shamanism. I was looking for Native American studies, and the closest I could get at the time was Latin American studies, because in those courses we studied a lot about Native American history. Um, so yeah, and a couple years of a PhD program before I got frustrated because they
Yeah.
started talking about meta theory, and I'm like, what do you mean meta theory? Like you guys are sitting around making up theories about theories about theories now, and now you want me to
Right.
believe the theories?
Yeah. True.
Like
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So true. So true.
so no, that
So,
was true, and I was working at the public defenders at the time and dealing with kind of like that sad scenario where my clients never had a good outcome.
Yeah.
Once you're wrapped up in the criminal justice system, there's no
absolutely.
justice.
I mean, that
Yes.
is
Yeah.
it's most of that is mental health issues that are in the criminal justice system, and there's a fix to that. There absolutely is a fix to that, and
I
they
wish we
don't
could
need to
give
be
them
in
all
that.
plant medicine, right?
Right? Wouldn't that be nice?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That spirit molecule is amazing, though. That DMT is just. I
Oh, so
mean,
you've
it's
seen it.
yeah. The bufo is. I mean, when my experience now, when I talk spirit molecule, I talk more of a bufo because
Okay.
that's more of what I see is the spirit molecule. The God molecule. That was just amazing for me. Do you work with that medicine too?
No, I do not. My how do I say this? My understanding as a Native American
Hmm.
minister is
Right.
that I can only work with 100% natural medicine that's prepared the same
Hmm.
way as our ancestors did. So if
Gotcha.
I start working with extracts, I'm out of bounds.
I
I,
gotcha.
I don't enjoy the same protection.
Right.
Yes.
Not that I
Now,
Okay.
don't approve of that medicine, but I I'm going to stick with what I've got just to be
Yeah,
Right,
yeah, yeah.
absolutely,
Of course, of
absolutely.
course. Well,
It's kind of amazing when, to me, to see, you know, people with your background and to get into this plant medicine. You know, it's not, you don't see that every
well,
day.
I mean, this is in your bloodline, and this is in your heritage.
Right.
My
And
grandmother was full-blood native, and I spent a lot of time with her. So yes, very much. I love her
right.
And
so
so you,
much.
from childhood, you sort of felt this call. You understood it.
Yeah, I mean, I always had strange dreams. I was always very sensitive,
Mhm.
very creative, and I sensed things that other people didn't sense, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
You
Yeah.
were aware of
hmm
things.
You know,
Yeah.
also, can we talk a little bit about sweat lodges? I don't think a lot of people hear about them, but they don't know the benefits of sweat
Mhm.
lodges, you know? So can we
Yeah.
discuss that a little bit?
When I was in Albuquerque, and of course still in Albuquerque, is our sweat lodge, Temazcal, and there are lots of different stories about sweat lodge. Um, Almost every tribe in North America had their version of it, and of course, you have your Swedes, your Norwegians, um, and all throughout Mesoamerica. So the purpose of sweat lodge is a community spiritual activity.
hmm
At the bottom level, kind of, or the base foundation level. The next level of it is cleansing,
hmm
Mhm.
emotionally, physically. When you
Right.
sweat, when your core temperature gets up to a certain degree, you start to release toxins. The first level of toxins you release are petrochemicals, so
hmm
plastics, which are really a
Mhm.
nasty business, and they're in all of our food, and people all have them. Then we start sweating out neurotoxins. And then
hmm
at the highest temperature, which is really difficult to get to, you start sweating out metals, which are
Mm.
also a nasty business. So there are usually 4 rounds to a sweat lodge. In our tradition, we start with the East, which is greetings. Then we do our work, and then we do prayers and we do thanks. There's a song for each round. And in my lodge, we pass the talking stick to everyone. So on every
Mm.
single round, the stick goes around the whole lodge. And it's a really special thing because you're in complete darkness in this complete discomfort. It's really disconcerting. If
Mhm.
people have any type of claustrophobia, they have to kind of dominate that. And what it does is at a certain point, like I was talking about the separation between spirit and flesh, and we have a
Right.
biological machine, and then we have a spirit, which is energy. Most people aren't completely aware of their spirit until they have to force their body to do something. And then
Mm.
Mhm.
you go, aha. So
Right.
you have to get in touch with your mind and your spirit to force your body to sit in a place that's extremely uncomfortable.
Mhm. Mhm.
Right.
And how long does that last? How long is it a ceremony generally?
It's different every time. If there
Okay.
are 5 people, it's shorter. If people don't make as many prayers or they don't talk as much, it's shorter. So
Right.
after a
Okay.
little while, people kind of get the hang of it, like, oh, short and sweet. Let's do it like that.
There you go.
We just
There
have a
you go.
talk. There's always going to be someone who like wants to go on, and we're like, come on, man. No,
Right.
we love to hear people's prayers. Don't get me wrong, but it
Right.
gets
Right.
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 tiring.
Yeah. But it's physically is a difficult process.
It is. It's very challenging. It's challenging almost more psychologically. I imagine it's somewhat like firewalking. I was talking with my friend Chris, and he was talking about having done firewalking. And we started talking about it, and I'm like, that's kind of like sweat lodge in a way. Like you have to become one with the heat and really let it pass through you
hmm
um,
Yeah.
in order to get through it, if that makes sense.
Oh,
It
well.
does. I
hmm
mean, I think that a lot of these medicines are like that.
hmm
It's you really have to. It can be challenging to do, and you have to come to a place to be able to do it.
Yeah, I like how you described it as an MMA fighter. I think that's like
Yeah.
all medicines for
Preparation.
me. Right. It
Yeah.
definitely is.
Yeah. Well, with that, can you tell us a little bit about pipe ceremonies or
Yes.
pipe
What are pipe
ceremonies?
ceremonies?
Okay. Um, in my tradition, it's a Muskogee Creek tradition pipe that
hmm
I
Okay.
carry. Most people are familiar with Lakota ceremony. I do not carry that type of pipe. That would be a chanupa, and mine is not a chanupa. So our tradition is a little bit different. Typically, people before they unite the two parts of the pipe, there's the bowl and there's the stem. And when the bowl represents the divine feminine and the stem represents the divine masculine, right? Yin and yang. And like
Yep.
anything else, when you unite those two things in a sacred way, it's like a phone call to God. It's a life force bringing type of thing. The sacred pipe has been around since time immemorial, but the traditional story about it from the Lakota has to do with a white buffalo calf woman. And I'm not going to tell that story because it's not
Right.
mine to tell, but if you
Right.
haven't heard it, it's just a wonderful story about
Okay.
how the pipe was brought to their people. Similarly, the Muskogee Creek tradition that says that this pipe was brought by teachers in order to allow us to contact higher consciousness. No, we don't put any plant medicine in there. Well, we put herbal medicine in there.
Gotcha.
Kinnick or chinchasa, usually red willow bark. The inside, if you have like the bark of the tree and you take the inside of it and you shave it, then that's in there. People put in lavender, mullein, often tobacco as well. I don't necessarily put tobacco in there.
Right.
But tobacco is used for prayers as an offering to the spirits.
Right.
No, tobacco is a very powerful shamanic medicine, though. I mean, all around. I mean, it's definitely a cleanse and a purging tool.
Yeah, you know what's funny is we never used it that way as snuff. And so the first time that I worked with it that way, I had this powerful experience, and I'm like, oh, I kind of get tobacco now, if that,
Right.
you know,
Right.
Right.
how it runs through your body.
With
Right.
with like rape.
Right.
Now,
How
do
do
you
you
do
guys
that
like that?
in your ceremonies? Do you serve rape or hape?
No, I do not.
No.
What's that?
The way that I was taught, it's just the medicine. Um, and although I really appreciate Ikaros and music, there were no traditional songs taught to me. So all of the songs that we sing are more modern songs, and oftentimes we'll put on music that's pre-recorded and just allow everyone to be still. And oftentimes we also do silence, but we start off the ceremony with shamanic drumming, and I have a couple of different instruments that are fun, hang drums.
Right.
So it's kind of like a steel drum. They make a beautiful, soothing sound, and they're good for the energy body. And we work with rattles and fans and sage and obsidian blade to cut energy. So we have a lot of different tools.
Yeah. To move energy.
Absolutely.
Exactly, because when people are going into their unconscious, they're literally shedding this dark energy. And if you've ever felt it, which I'm sure you have, right? Like this stuff coming up, like sediment or something, like ooze, right? And we can see it, and it's difficult to explain. You can also feel it and sense it. You know, we go over and we alleviate people of some of that. That's to me, that's the most important part, is being really present to people and sensing them and quietly experiencing that energy, almost like a teacher on a field trip or something,
Right.
Okay.
making sure
So
the trip won't get.
when you're walking people through these different kinds of ceremonies and journeys, I mean, what is your role after that point? I mean, do you stay silent with them? Do you talk with them? Do you touch? What is your role usually? Or is it varies, I bet.
As part of our like really extensive training package, one of the things that we put in like capital bold letters is no touching.
Yeah.
Right.
Because people feel so lovey-dovey during ceremony, they're feeling so much love that it's
Right.
easy to kind of like cross people's boundaries without even wanting to.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't do much physical touching.
Right.
We work with the vulture fans, the owl fans. They have their symbolic purpose in the spirit world, like vulture cleanses, because vultures eat things that are dying, right? So dark energy. So that fan will actually cleanse a lot of energy. Am I
Interesting.
frozen up on your end, or am I still good?
No, you're fine.
No, you're good.
really
It looks
good.
great.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're
no.
not frozen at all.
When you're serving ayahuasca, do you serve certain ayahuasca, like Peruvian, Colombian? I know there's a Hawaiian.
The sweet
So
Hawaiian
can we discuss that a little bit? Talk about those?
and the preparation.
Right, and the preparation too.
It's a lot. We've worked with a lot of different medicines,
Mm-hmm.
Colombian medicine,
Mm-hmm.
Peruvian medicine, Brazilian, Hawaiian.
Right.
We've worked with traditionally brewed medicine, um, which is done with 7 to 12 washes.
Mm-hmm.
We've also worked with something that they're calling cold brew, which I just love. There's a distillation process. They take the plants and grind them, and then they do a warm water distillation process.
Mm.
So when you're boiling the plant medicine outdoors and all those vapors are going up, you're actually losing a lot of the phytochemicals or the nutrients,
Interesting.
because a lot, from the cannabis process, the
Mm-hmm.
distillation process, that
Right.
Right.
when you boil certain plants, you're losing in the volatiles and the steam, you're
Right.
losing a lot of the vital essence. So I especially like the cold brew, because there are actually 30 plus different things in ayahuasca that they've been able to find and identify that are
Hmm.
very, very healing, aside from just the MAOI.
Okay.
So, and that one tends to upset people's stomachs a lot less because there's not as much fiber and roughage. When they're taking the plant medicine and they're, chopping it up, grinding it up, and putting it in the stew pot, on the open flames, then there's a lot of those particles still in there. At the bottom of the bottle, you'll oftentimes find the kind of stuff that looks like mulch. Well,
Right.
Yes.
yeah, that's doing a roto-rooter on your stomach, which is
Mm.
great.
Mm.
But then I think when people need to purge energetically, they're
Right.
going to
Yeah.
purge anyway. We don't need
Yes.
to
Yeah.
True.
add like the roughage in there to really guarantee that they're
Right.
going to get well.
Right. And everybody, you don't always have to purge through vomiting or through purging. You can purge a lot of ways. I
A
mean,
lot of different ways.
so many different ways to purge. I mean, the people think the full effect from an ayahuasca experience is to purge. And, I don't know how you believe that, but I don't think that's truly the case. How do you feel about that?
Purging.
I don't think it's a requirement, honest to goodness.
Yeah, me either. I don't.
But I will say that a good purge, I mean, we call it getting well because
Yes,
Yes.
right.
you're getting well, you're getting better.
Yes.
Hmm.
We're getting
It's not like
out.
getting sick,
Yeah.
right? When
Right.
you're sick and you have the flu and you're getting sick, it's a
Mhm.
completely different experience.
Yes.
Mhm.
So it can really allow people to go deeper and to release things that no longer serve them. But
Right.
no, it's not required, and people are really stuck on that. I think a lot of
Yep.
people have made these videos where like the main emphasis is on their purging,
Right.
and so people think it's like a requirement to have a good journey. I
And it
frankly
really
prefer it
is.
when people don't purge. We have people do a fast for at least 28 days. Um,
Right.
vegan, whole food,
The
local,
So
dieta.
that's your dieta, pre-dieta is 28 days?
at least, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Do-
what's
And
funny is dieta actually refers to working in a different way, but most people call this dieta anyhow.
Mhm. True.
Um,
That's
right.
true. So what does
Yeah. What does
can you
that
tell me
look
a little bit
like?
about what yours looks like?
yeah, sure. At least 28 days of abstinence
Hmm.
from many things, actually. We ask people to abstain from TV, from news, as much as possible from social media, because what you ingest is more than just what you put in your mouth.
For
Hmm.
sure.
And we want to try to cleanse out the unconscious of
Right.
like that kind of daily garbage, really.
Right.
Um, the next level is asking people to do some form of prayer and meditation.
Right.
So breath work, yoga, tai chi, qigong, long walks in nature, meditation, especially transcendental meditation, is really excellent.
Mm. Right.
So that's
Mm.
part of it.
Okay.
Abstinence from cannabis and any other substances.
Mhm.
If people have a medical card and they need it for pain or anxiety, then obviously that's an exception. But I find that people do best if there's no other medicines involved.
Right.
Mhm.
Cannabis. Let's talk
Wait,
about
wait, wait.
cannabis.
Let's hear.
Okay, I'm
In
sorry.
just
Go
one
ahead.
second. I want to hear the rest of the
Sure.
dieta though. So I love hearing these because each one, although very similar, there are some differences depending on where you go.
Yeah, there are a lot of differences. And some people have even said that it's not important at all to do it. And I've seen over the many years and the many people that the more the more seriously they take their preparation in general, the better they do. And that's more than just the dieta part.
Right.
So the food, vegan as much as possible, some dairy, some fish, but if you can get it down to the bare minimum, it's wonderful. Fresh vegetables, fresh fruits,
Right.
whole
Clean.
foods,
Very clean. Right.
beans, rice.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Um, abstaining from alcohol, tobacco where possible. I don't find that tobacco especially counterindicates because often it's used in ceremony anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Um, what else? Oh,
Sex.
abstinence from sex.
Right.
Um, okay, making love is a sacred, beautiful activity. So we're not judging it that it's a bad thing, but rather that we want to separate our energies. And you
Right.
want to be in your personal power with your energy ball kind of clean and just you. And when
Right.
people make love, they exchange energies in a
Yeah.
very intense way. And so that essentially means that you're carrying someone else's stuff into ceremony. You don't want to do that. You want to do your own stuff. And you
Right.
can come
Right.
back a better person and love each other even more.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you limit your ceremonies to a certain amount of people?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No more than 15 and
No more.
preferably 10.
Yeah,
Mm,
beautiful.
that is beautiful.
Yeah.
And then, and what do you recommend afterwards as far as the diet goes?
Oh, it's important not to eat anything with preservatives that counterindicate with the MAOI. So sausage, especially. We once
Mm.
had this really big MMA guy who didn't like to listen to instructions, so I won't mention his name, although most people would know who it was.
Oh,
And he kept on trying to sneak off and get a hot dog. He had a thing for hot dogs.
right.
And we kept on catching. We're like, David, don't do it. You're going to be sorry. So finally, after he got done with ceremony, he was driving back to his hometown and he called from the side of the road crying because
Sick.
he had gotten a hot dog and he had an acute panic attack. It's not going to
Mm.
it's not going to, how do I say it? It's kind of like when you have a bad trip, that stuff was already in there in the,
Right.
but
Right.
it becomes very, very intense.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Food reacts a
Interesting.
lot with
With
these
these
medicines.
medicines.
Certain foods really react with
Mhm.
some of these
Mhm.
medicines.
It's
for
important.
sure.
It's important to have the knowledge and the information, and that's part of keeping people safe
Right.
during ceremony.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
having all this knowledge and information. It's nothing to take lightly.
No.
Yeah, and we actually have people stay a third day whenever possible. Um,
Mhm.
and that's an integration day. And, we feed them, we make sure that they're grounded. We have social time. We don't talk during our ceremonies, and we encourage people to, do the noble silence.
Right.
And
Yes,
Okay. Hmm.
sacred
Yeah.
silence.
yeah, the sacred silence, because oftentimes, people's anxiety and nervousness expresses in different ways.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so
Right.
oftentimes the chatting thing, and it can be so hard on other people who've worked so hard to clear their minds. You have
Mm.
just one person who wants to talk, and I tell the story about this lady who is having some kind of bad trip about or a difficult journey, let's say, about
Right.
her childhood. And her mom had force fed her a lot of vegetables. So there's, like 10, 12 of us there. And she screams, I effing hate carrots.
Right.
Hate carrots. And we're like, oh my gosh, I was in a totally different place. And now all I can think about is carrots.
Yeah. Right.
Purple
Yeah.
carrots, orange carrots, buttered carrots, oh, I'm hungry. So
Awesome.
Energy
anyway,
transfers easily while in ceremony, which is why I love that you have 10 to 15 at
Yep.
most people,
Right.
because
people are super
it's a lot.
susceptible too and very suggestible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
So we always
absolutely.
have space where people can process, oh, there's not a problem. If someone's going to purge through tears and wailing and grieving, that's
Right.
wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But we
Absolutely.
always have enough space where we can lovingly guide that person
Mhm.
to that space
Mm-hmm.
and they can work on their own with an assistant
Right.
to process it.
Absolutely. Where is your church, Courtney? Where do you do these ceremonies?
The church is based in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
So half of our ceremonies are in New Mexico at the hot springs, 2 hours south of Albuquerque. The hot springs replace our sweat lodge in that case. So
Right.
people do their cleansing with the springs. And then we do them in Woodstock, New York as well.
Oh,
At this
that's
Okay.
great.
beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful
beautiful.
Yeah,
place.
I bet you that's
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to hear. Finally, I'd like to hear about you've written 3 books, and I'd like to hear what those are. I think that you're fascinating, Courtney. You have such an incredible amount of information, and it's and now you have 3 books on top of all of that.
I'm really flattered, but I feel like almost I didn't write those books. I feel
Oh,
Mhm.
like spirit kind of
Yeah.
propelled me.
Yeah.
Um, the first one was when I was sick with E. coli poisoning, which was a very ayahuasca-like experience to be between worlds constantly and back
right.
and forth. That death experience, slow over 3.5 years. And I was very sick and I was having these lucid dreams. And I went and interviewed the people that I was instructed to interview. So that's where I first met my teacher. He was in the dream time. And my
Mm-hmm.
daughter in the spirit world before she was born actually brought me to him and was
Mhm.
calling him Tata.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea what that meant, but it means elder, obviously, like Taita.
Like Taita, right? Okay.
Yeah, so I interviewed him and 9 other really well-known experts in consciousness. Um, Masaru Emoto, Fred Allen Wolf, Dr. Quantum, um, Miguel Ruiz and Jose Ruiz. I got to spend the
Uh-huh.
day with Jose at the Omega Institute, and he and his dad are every bit the people that they appear to be. And that's something that was really refreshing about all of the people I interviewed, even though they were very famous and some wealthy and what have you, super intelligent. They were all humble and kind and very graceful people. Um,
Mm.
so I felt really honored to be able to write that. But it was going back and forth between the dream time sequences that I was having as I was dying, and then the daily experiences of trying to figure out what was going on.
Right.
Um, so that was a really intense time for me. Finally, at a Sundance, I was guided to touch the tree. They don't usually allow you to touch the tree, but the elders said, you're pretty close to passing. Um, you need something, so walk in there and touch the tree. It knocked me back like 6 to 8 feet, and the 2 warriors who were behind me too were kicked back. And at that very moment, my kung fu master was dousing my well in New York, and he called and said, you have E. coli poisoning in your well. And I had been in and out of the ER. I'd had every test done that could be done. Certainly, they thought I was completely insane as I was having all these weird visions. Um,
Mm.
and it was slow death by E.
Yeah,
coli.
yeah. Poisoning. You're poisoning.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
lot of plant medicine is actually poison.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a common theme.
Hmm.
There's that one, and that one's called 10 Tips and Trips on Dying.
Hmm. Okay.
The other one is 4 Steps into the Vortex, and it's part of our training manual. We did videos with it, so when people are training for ayahuasca ceremony, they have 5-10 minute videos that include shamanic drumming to help them get used to kind of going into trance. Um, and that's an exciting thing. I
Mm-hmm.
really like that book because it's a blend of shamanism, like
Right.
traditional native practices, and
Right.
science.
Yeah.
I'm really geeky. I love to read and I love to do research, and I love it when science catches up with shamanism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting
It's
there too,
happening,
isn't
isn't
it?
it?
It's coming close.
Hmm.
You guys also like science?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I
Well,
like, I guess, living by learning. I guess
right.
I like learning more than science.
Learning.
Science is
Well, there's
Yeah.
interesting.
the science
Yeah.
behind these
Oh,
medicines,
definitely.
and I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I find this ceremony fascinating. How
Mhm.
this same ceremony has been passed on for, they say, 10,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
The ceremony that my elder taught me. He was trained in Akiva. He was part of the medicine society in his tribe, and so he changed the formula enough so that he wasn't betraying his vows to not disclose that information. Um, but yeah, he transferred the knowledge all the same.
Wow.
So the ceremony is run on principles that have been time tested. And also the knowledge that he passed on to me as I was training. Before I even started working with plant medicine, I trained with him for 7 years. First came, the bag carrying and the humbling,
Mm-hmm.
the grasshopper, wax on, wax off, right?
Right,
Uh,
right.
and then after that came, make the fire, learn how to make fire and work with the fire. Then came sweat lodge. And then I had to pour sweat lodge with him there, really literally breathing down my neck.
Right.
And he was very exacting. That was a long process, very nerve wracking. Years and years of going to ceremony every Friday. And then eventually he started to work with me with medicine little by little. First, Datura, which I recommend you never use unless you're training as a medicine person. There's no need, and it's very, very dangerous.
What is it
But
called?
Datura,
Okay.
Okay.
that's the one that helps us to see into the spirit world,
Okay.
the other side of the veil. So it allows you to see auras, energies, spirits, dark entities like attachments. So when
Right.
somebody comes to go to ceremony, a lot of times people have attachments, small, large, many,
Sure.
few. It's pretty common. When I first
Right.
heard that, I thought, oh, this guy has absolutely lost his mind, you know. But then he said, it's not that different than Catholicism. You think about exorcisms,
Sure.
that's been practiced forever.
Right.
Forever.
Forever.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, yeah. And then eventually San Pedro and peyote. I started with peyote before I started working with my teacher, though. Started going to NAC meetings.
Can you just
Okay.
touch on the difference between those two
San
real
Pedro
quick?
and peyote. That
I
is.
know the difference, but I don't think a lot of people out there may. So why don't you just touch on that?
Sure. So San Pedro has only one psychoactive ingredient, aside from the purgative in the skin. It's just got mescaline. Peyote is like the mothership. It has 30 plus identifiable psychoactive psychedelic substances. It's very powerful, and yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite medicines. Although I love San Pedro as well.
Mm-hmm.
People have different admixtures that they use with the San Pedro to kind of enhance it.
Right.
Some people will use mate and lime, and people have different ways of preparing it. I like to skin it and core it and freeze it, and then puree it with lime, and then have people sip on mate afterwards, and that really, really makes it kick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The
But
grand.
peyote is just peyote.
Yeah.
We'll work with it in dried, raw, and tea form.
Is that an intense,
That's a
long
very
journey?
intense journey, I've heard.
It can be a very intense journey. I find it very gentle and beautiful, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems to do, at least for me, and
Mm-hmm.
from what I've noticed, um, it has the reverse procedure as ayahuasca. With ayahuasca, we seem to go into the underworld in
Right.
order to
Yes.
get up into
Right.
the upper world, right? And with peyote, it seems that the bottom comes out at the end. If I'm ever gonna purge and just like really dump some toxic feelings out, um, then it's at the end, kind of when it's wearing off and you're coming down.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
That is interesting because, yes, the ayahuasca is, it's for me, the purging is immediate, almost immediate.
Yeah. And those feelings of like the uncomfortable feelings coming up,
Right.
it's kind of like the cover charge for getting into the spirit world.
Right.
It comes right away.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
It's so true.
It's just all these medicines are so scary, but yet so beautiful for me, at least. I mean, in
Well,
the
it's the
long run,
unknown.
they're
That's
just
what's scary. The unknown.
right? But after said and done, nothing has been more of a catalyst in my life than these medicines. I mean, I don't think
Absolutely.
my life could never be where it is today without these medicines.
Oh, I mean, it saved my life in a million different ways.
Yeah.
Combo as well. I mean,
Yo,
here
one of my
it's just-
favorites. I'm going to say
We
that is
love
a definite
we love
medicine
it.
when I came on this path that I did not prefer. But as I've experienced it more and more and sat with that, it's probably my favorite.
And there's a very difficult one. I mean,
Mhm.
that's a very difficult, and it's
Yeah.
a short, 20, 30 minutes, and it is not a mind altering.
Mhm.
It's not a psychedelic.
No.
It's a cleanse, and it is very challenging, but it is a beautiful medicine, and it is it is so healing in so many ways, physically, energetically, spiritually. I mean, it's incredible.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
And it is definitely an ordeal medicine.
Yep,
It
definitely.
is an ordeal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another very unpredictable one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now that one I studied for 5 years
Mhm.
with a teacher in Colorado to
Oh,
work with
wow.
that medicine. And it was before it was tragically popular. Almost nobody even knew about it.
Mhm.
More than 15 years ago.
Right.
And so, yeah, that one saved my life, I think. I
Do
had
you
more than
still serve Cambo? Do you still serve Cambo, Courtney?
we do every Friday before a ceremony. We begin
And
with teachings and kambo.
Mm-hmm.
because the benefits of having Cambo before any kind of plant medicine, amazing, right?
It
Can
just
you
gets a
tell?
lot of stuff out of the way, out of the lizard brain, out of the amygdala.
Right.
It touches that part of the brain and helps us to release preverbal trauma where it's stored. And in the tissues, cleanses the lymphatic, pulls toxins. It's just amazing. And of course, it's they call it a somatic reset as well. So it resets your energy body to be more in line with your spirit, because
Right.
our physical bodies tend to get out of alignment. So
They
It
do.
does.
They
wonderful.
And
do.
it
I
puts
think
them right
that's
back in.
definitely why we all come back to these medicines to get back into that alignment.
And to
So
stand there. Yeah. Well, Courtney, this has
you
been
have been
amazing.
amazing.
I just love you so
You guys
much.
are
I can't
amazing.
wait to come do ceremony with you. And you know, the whole Native American side of it is just fascinates me. We did a walk with the grandfather about a month ago, and it just opened a whole new door
Right.
of interest into this. And I mean, it like you said, 10,000 years. I mean, that speaks for itself. So I thank you so much.
Thank you. Really.
If you guys have any questions or need anything, you know, you just
Right.
reach out to us at the Plant Medicine Path, and we'll get you in touch with
Actually,
Courtney.
a really nice little live audience tonight, one of our
Yeah.
Virgo ones. And then this will
Oh
be
my
live
gosh.
streamed, so everybody will see it, and then we will keep it going,
Yeah,
you know?
we'll keep it posted.
Oh, look at that. Everyone's saying gratitude for combo. Hi from Lafayette. Sierra
Yeah,
Colonies.
Chris.
Oh,
Yeah, Julie, thank you guys so much,
Yeah.
Sierra, and we just appreciate you coming on. It's important to get the message out there about these medicines, and we love your view. We
Yeah, we do.
appreciate you so much.
You know, we're all medicine people trying to just do the right
find our
thing.
way home. Yeah,
Yeah, we're all walking each other home, right? Like Ram Dass
for
says.
sure.
Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Much
Ciao.
love to you too. So honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Love you.